Few orders were as sacred as the Night's Watch. Yes, there was the Kingsguard, clad in their spotless white garb. There was the Order of Maesters, hailing from the Citadel in all their learned ways. There were the septons, septas, and silent sisters who roamed the Seven Kingdoms, preaching and doing the work laid out by the faith. But none would live in their relative comfort and splendor, if not for the Night's Watch. The Order of the Black Brothers had been founded in the ancient days of the world, tasked to forever stand guard atop the wall for the good of the realm. Yet, this duty was considered by most a punishment, and was used as such in the ages that followed, filling an order created out of necessity and veneration to become a hive of putrid souls and fallen and failed heroes. Even though the order still stands, this doomed the Night's Watch. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Exploring Fiction. By the time of A Song of Ice and Fire, the Night's Watch, like most other Westerosi institutions, was a shadow of its former self. Few men who possessed true virtue served in the ranks of the Black Brothers, though that was never seen as a requirement. But the particular use of the Night's Watch as a punishment for criminals across the Seven Kingdoms put the Order at a pronounced disadvantage, especially compared to the other brother and sisterhoods across the realm. Though their services had not been required in their fullest capacity for many years, the Night's Watch still served the greatest purpose in the realm, to protect the Seven Kingdoms from death, enslavement, and extinction itself. This was long forgotten, though, and the average Black Brother was generally from the lowest and least respected castes of society. There were honorable men, true, but they were outnumbered by those who joined to avoid disability and death. When they are truly needed most, it seems the Night's Watch will be most unequipped to handle the one task for which they were built. So, why exactly is the Night's Watch doomed to fail, and how did it end up this way? Let's explore. The Night's Watch dates back farther than almost any established order in the Seven Kingdoms. It was founded during the Age of Heroes, almost 8,000 years before the current narrative, as a band of sworn brothers intent on protecting the realm from the dreaded Others. They established themselves upon the Wall, though aside from a minor foray, fought mostly wildlings instead of the mysterious men of blue eyes and black hands. Much like the Kingsguard, the men of the Night's Watch took a solemn oath to hold their position until their death. Also in that oath was the surrender of all lands, titles, spouses, and children. But the Night's Watch was far from the Kingsguard. The White Cloaks enjoyed the great honor, renown, and reputation that came with their order. They were known as the finest knights in the realm, tasked with protecting the king himself. The Kingsguard were allowed to travel the Seven Kingdoms with their liege or his family, and were encouraged to participate in tourneys, feasts, and celebrations to test their merit and satiate their appetites. Their lives, of course, had to be given up for the king if required, but they otherwise lived in general comfort and prosperity. The Night's Watch, however, was a far cry from this idealistic dream. The Black Brothers lived not in the breezy calm of the southern hills, but the frostbitten tundra of the far north as would allow. Even in the warmest of summers, the Wall and its castles were still strewn with ice and snow. Aside from the hardy Northmen who learned to adapt through lack of choice, such conditions were unappealing to any and all in the Seven Kingdoms. The appeal of the Night's Watch was already far less than any other sworn brotherhood in the realm. What's more, the Black Brotherhood was viewed by most as a punishment, even if it did not start this way. Though deemed honorable by some, and necessary by most, taking the vows of the Night's Watch quickly devolved from a great honor to a damning sentence. Taking the black was presented by many a lord and king as an alternative to death or mutilation, and thus many men chose this option. This bolstered the numbers of the Black Brothers, always a welcome benefit, but simultaneously created a quandary that remains unsolved even in the current narrative. The quality of the men of the Night's Watch is at best questionable, and at worst, detestable. Westeros was filled with dishonorable men, and the worst of these were shepherded to the wall to take the black if their end was not met by the sword. For every good, virtuous man of the Black Brotherhood, it seemed there were 5 to offset him in the opposite moral direction. And though the others were rarely seen, and the wildlings were mostly a passing threat, this predicament often reared its head, even in times of peace, and especially without a strong or established leader. In A Song of Ice and Fire, especially the later entries, this issue was highlighted greatly during the reign of Jon Snow as Lord Commander. Despite his status as a bastard, Jon Snow was raised alongside the noble children of Winterfell, and trained at arms with Robb Stark and Theon Greyjoy. This immediately placed him at an advantage when he first took the Black, though some members of the Night's Watch were dishonored knights, and therefore knew the rigorous rites of combat. Most were not, and had to be taught from the most basic fundamentals up. His experience with arms and armor was only one way in which Jon Snow distinguished himself. With the aid of his best friend Samwell Tarly, he was even elected Lord Commander after the death of Jeor Mormont in the battle beneath the wall. Jon had voluntarily joined the Night's Watch, and was honorable besides, and his choice of friends amongst the Black Brothers reflected this. Aside from the aforementioned Samwell, a craven with a loyal heart, Jon befriended Grenn, Pyp, Dolorous Edd, and Maester Aemon, and found himself at odds with the likes of Sir Alliser Thorne and Janos Slynt. As one of his first acts as new Lord Commander, Jon ordered the former captain of the Gold Cloaks to head the garrison at Greyguard. This was his first command in his effort to revive many of the abandoned castles along the wall, and as Janos proved troublesome at Castle Black, he was a well-suited choice to send away. However, he refused Jon's order, forcing the Lord Commander to execute the man himself. While this heightened Lord Snow's reputation amongst some, it stirred dissent amongst others. Janos Slynt became the first bit of evidence during Jon's reign that the average man of the Night's Watch was dishonest and untrustworthy. Instead, he turned to his friends to carry out his commands. Jon sent Samwell and Maester Aemon aboard a ship to Old Town, so Sam could train to replace the ailing Targaryen. Grenn and Pyp were ordered to bolster Eastwatch, and Halder and Todder, other dependable brothers, were sent to the Shadow Tower. All those left at Castle Black were Jon Snow and the most embittered and black-hearted of the Crows, especially after the leave of Stannis Baratheon and his men. Though Jon was left with no choice, his few allies were now spread thin across the wall and across the world. His enemies, or at least those who thought they knew better than he, were the only ones close at hand. When the moment came when Jon Snow made the decision of family over brotherhood, it cost him his lifeblood. He did not order the Night's Watch to accompany him and the wildlings to Winterfell to cast aside Ramsay Bolton. Yet still, on a tumultuous night at the wall, his enemies closed in, twisting knives between his ribs in the shadow of a bellowing giant. None of Jon's allies were at his side to warn him or save him, a testament to how few truly good men occupied the ranks of the Black Brothers. Even if Jon Snow had attempted to utilize the lesser men, the odds were far from in his favor. Along with the previously mentioned Janos Slynt, another example lies in the form of Darien. A former singer hailing from the Reach, Darien was sent to the Wall under what he claimed was an unfair circumstance. He was caught abed with one of Lord Mathis Rowan's daughters, and while he insisted she had invited him in, she cried otherwise. Given the choice, Darien decided to take the Black. However, when Jon Snow was elected Lord Commander, and presented Darien with his first opportunity to venture away from the Wall, the bard in training did not keep his vows, but instead abandoned his post. Jon chose Darien to replace Yoren as a recruiter for the Night's Watch, and sent him aboard the ship bound for Old Town alongside Samwell Tarly and Maester Aemon. But as the vessel docked briefly in Braavos, the temptations of the pleasures of the mortal world, along with his distance from his post, broke Darien quickly. He took to the brothels of the city, where he was found and beaten by Samwell. It mattered not, however, as Darien threw his black cloak aside and denounced the Watch. Though he would later pay for his words and actions as an oathbreaker, Darien's tale displayed the folly of relying upon men of poor quality in the Night's Watch. And unfortunately for Jon Snow and his friends, men of poor quality were plenty abound amongst the Black Brothers. Especially under the brief leadership of Jon Snow, the Night's Watch was placed in an unwinnable position. The Order of Black Brothers served arguably the most important role in the entire realm, perhaps the entire world, yet their ranks were filled with the worst of humanity. Taking the black was viewed as a punishment or curse, not an honor. Those few men of virtue who donned the Crow's cloak were overworked and spread thin. Meanwhile, the bulk of the brothers, the men of poor character, were either too selfish or apathetic to carry out their required tasks. Some were even actively antagonistic toward their superiors. No such order could survive such an unjust structure, and the volatile nature of the Night's Watch in A Song of Ice and Fire illustrated this seamlessly. While it is unclear if the Black Brothers will be prepared for the arrival of the icy demons they were formed to ward off, the current state of the Order suggests quite the opposite. So, that's all for this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new here, I'd love to have you. Visit my website russelawellsauthor.com for exclusive reviews, fiction, and more. And sign up for my mailing list for free exclusive content. The links for both are in the description below. And, like always, I will see you next time.